Hello, this is Marian coming to you from seemstobeso.com. Today I'm going to talk to you again about resizing your SVGs. Recently I have been working with SVGs a lot and creating them for my patterns, and today I was working on a pattern and I came across an issue where I had created the SVG in Sure Cuts Alot. Well, I didn't create it, but I had saved it because of the issue with opening Make the Cut SVGs in Silhouette, where they don't open to the correct size. And I opened the SVG from SCAL that I had saved in Make the Cut, and it opened to a smaller size, which is not supposed to happen, or at least I thought it wasn't anyway. And when I did this last year, it wasn't that way. They opened to the proper size, so I'm not sure what's happened in Sure Cuts Alot that has changed that. So I have decided at this point that I am just going to make my SVGs and Make the Cut, and you can open them in the software of your choice. I'm just going to give you the sizes that they should be. So I thought I'd show you first just a little bit of comparison, like I did in my original article here on my site back in November when I touched on this issue before. This was a image tutorial. This is now a video tutorial. And then I'm going to show you in each software real quick how you fix the size, so that you'll know exactly how to do it. First, I'm going to show you the opening of a Sure Cuts Alot SVG. First I will just say that I make all of my SVGs in Make the Cut. I prefer that software because it's easier to rename the shapes, especially just by a double click on the little layer line. In Sure Cuts Alot, it's different because when you double click, it will open up a window to name it, but you then have to put your mouse in the window to name the file. And this is just an extra step that I just don't want to have the time for, and I always forget. And it doesn't matter if I'm in the habit of doing it, I just always forget. I want to be able to just double click and do like most people do in Windows, type my letter and move on. But that's not the case in Sure Cuts Alot, and that's why I don't make my SVGs in Sure Cuts Alot. So anyway, this is an SVG that was originally made in Make the Cut. It was then saved again in Sure Cuts Alot so that in Silhouette it would open at the correct size, and it does do that. When you highlight the file, you can see here that it shows this as the size. When I open the PDF, I'm hoping you can see this, it shows here, this is the line for that, and you can see here that it's 5467 by 8.8933. And what it's done, it's just rounded off those little last numbers. This is the size it should be, and that's perfectly all well and good. The same thing is with the shapes. With the shapes, it's done the same thing. It's opened these at the size they should be, at the size it should be in Make the Cut. Although when you open an SVG in Sure Cuts Alot that's made from Make the Cut, it usually almost 99% of the time opens up at the size it should be. But in Silhouette, it doesn't do that. This one here is a perfect example, and I think you'll see the obvious difference in size. This is the size it should be. This is the Make the Cut size that was opened from the MTC SVG. There is a big difference between what the sizes should be. This is correct. This is incorrect. And so to change the size in here, you need to open your PDF. All of my patterns that include SVG files have a cutting file in them. You can either use the page view to find the cutting file itself. It's usually near the bottom of the menu. or you can go to the bookmarks and find it there also, and it will bring you to the cutting files page. I list the cutting file sizes, and so from here we can take and we can put this size in that it should be. And the first size I want to put in is 7.8767. 7.8. Okay, why is it doing that? Okay. 7.867. And the other one should be 8.8667. And see, it pretty much rounded it off to that anyway. And it will resize it for you, and you can just bring it into where you want it to show up. The other good thing about, doing this in Silhouette is that when you open an SVG in Silhouette, it automatically groups the file. Whether it was grouped or not, it automatically groups it. And so I don't think you can see that. So you right click on your selection and you can go to the ungroup in the menu, and it will show you the shapes as I named them in Make to Cut. If this is Sure Cuts Alot, it didn't save them. Instead, it renames them all to Polygon or some odd name. So this is another reason why I have stopped using Sure Cuts Alot at the moment, because to me the shapes are far more important than the sizes, and you need to know those shape names, because if not, then you have to go through and find the templates in your pattern, then try and match up the size to the shape. And that's not easy if the shape is not in the same way that the PDF is. This is a 12 by 12 size. I'll show you that. This is the size for the 9 by 9. Now obviously I didn't reshape this one prior to. I normally sit and reshape them all. So you would be able to match it up fairly easily, but if you can't, then if I had moved these all around the place, it would be far more difficult to try and match them up. And so that's why I've chosen to go the route I have. But if you just have them available to you via the Layers tab, which is right here, if you turn Layers off, you can see the layers disappear. If you want to see the layers, which shows the shapes, then you turn it on and ungroup it. Now if you ungroup prior to resizing, you will not see the size the way it should be. Okay, you need to know the whole size. So if you have ungrouped prior to this, you can see here how it shows 0 over here. It will be the same way with a newly opened one. If you ungroup first, you need to keep it grouped in order to find out the size or to resize the size. So that's how you do this in Silhouette Studio. In Make the Cut, I'm going to show you here how when I opened up the SCAL SVGs, as you can see, they are much smaller than what they need to be. This one was originally saved as a SVG in, well, both of these were saved as SVGs in Make to Cut, then reopened in Sure Cuts Alot to resize them for Silhouette so that they would open at the correct size in Silhouette. But then I opened them in Sure Cuts Alot and they drop in the size. It's like taking this SVG and opening it in Silhouette. If I had done that, it would probably come right out at about the same size. I'm not for sure on that, but because I didn't do that test. But as you can see, this is not the correct size for this layout item here. Let's see here. I'm trying to find my cut file. As you can see, it's way off the mark. it's supposed to be 5.48 and it shows us 4.10 here. So if I want to change this, I need to do this. I just highlight it and I retype the line. Then I can click my tab and go over here to the other one and do 8.86. I'm sorry. Oh, and it looks like it's, there we go. It's moved my, when I click enter on my keyboard, it then resizes it to what it should be. Since this is supposed to fit in a 9-inch block, you know that one of these has to come close to meeting that 9-inch size, and when it doesn't, there's definitely something wrong. I'm going to take that back and redo it. So as you can see here, I guess I don't know whether it's a software related issue or what it is that makes the SVGs need to be resized, but with that in mind, how can I do this properly or give you the correct SVGs if I can't produce the right things? And the same thing goes here with the shapes. As you can see, when I opened, this is with this here, these are the only things I ever rename, because you don't need shape names with a layout and editing guide. I renamed these shapes and all that is gone, and this is how they're renamed from Sure Cuts Alot. So to me, it is far more important that you have the actual shape names. Now if I take an SVG that I open in Sure Cuts Alot from MTC, it remembers the name also of the SVG. Let's see if I have that open. In Sure Cuts Alot, I have shown here an SVG where this is its own SVG file. This was saved in Make the Cut. I'm sorry, it was originally saved in Make the Cut, resaved in Sure Cuts Alot, and then reopened in Sure Cuts Alot. And as you can see here, there are no names after I reopened that SVG, even though a Sure Cuts Alot file, a project file, the SCAL extension file, will save those names that I gave the layers. Let's see here, I'll open an SVG that is from from there, and I will show you. Well, I don't want to do that necessarily. Let's delete that and put it on its own tab, and then reopen that file. Okay, as you can see, it saved it in the, it opened it in the size it would, and this is an actual MTC SVG. And as you can see here, here are the names of the layers, and that's only because it hasn't been resaved yet in Sure Cuts Alot. Once I save that SVG as a different as a new file, all these names will go away and it will become this, and that's just not acceptable to me. So I have to ask you to resize those files. So here it's the same process. When you rename, you just highlight and you would type in some numbers. I'm going to type in something major so you can see 12 point, and see how it's already taken and resized this to a difference. And it's also put in the because it's to keep the proportions. If I didn't want to keep the proportions, I would uncheck this first, and then it would resize just at the width and resize the height after I type in that height measurement. So hopefully the ratio is correct and it resizes normally, but because I just put in an oddball one, I mean, I just made up numbers in my head, it would go ahead and do that. The good thing, the cool thing about this, I guess, is that if you know the sizes that they need, I don't really only have to provide one SVG file for you to resize on, depending the size you do, and maybe I'll do that because it will save a little bit of work. But at the same time, I don't know, because it depends on the size you're doing. But I do want to emphasize how important it is to know that those SVGs are not always going to open at the size you need. And as a quilter or a seamstress, if we are using these for applique shapes, we absolutely have to know the size to cut that fabric at, or cut even our freezer paper shapes at, so that they are properly cut. Even if you're not doing turn edge applique, you need to have your size correct, because this is the size that a fabric or a freezer paper cut would be done at without a seam allowance. If you're going to add a seam allowance, then you would want to come in and add an offset, or whatever it is the software uses to add additional lines outside of your original cut line. But these are what is known as cut lines itself. I don't add the seam allowances to mine because I think that's something you have to decide you want to do yourself. And I don't cut a lot of fabric anymore with my cutter. I usually just stick to the freezer paper, and then of course I print my layouts. I print these, I cut these. That's the difference. So I hope I've given you an idea of how to do this. If you were doing this in Inkscape, I'm not going to open Inkscape, but the process is the same. If you need to change the size, you would just come up to the size. It's up in this bar. It's usually over about here in the software, and you want to make sure you're on inches or meters, whichever you use. But all of my SVGs are in inches, so in order to get the correct size meter-wise, you would want to put it on inches first and switch it to the inches, and then you could switch to meters, so that automatically makes that adjustment in the size. So that I hope this helps you with SVG sizing and what to do and how to change it in the various softwares. And I hope you have a great day. We'll see you again soon with a new cutting tutorial. Bye bye for now.